What's up, everybody? Welcome back in. I'm Keith with a Millie Mindset, a Millie Method, and today we're going to be watching another Gen Z video from Alexandria. The difference between young Gen Z and old Gen Z. Very interesting. Let's see what's up.
Talk about Gen Z and you're talking about Gen Z in a negative way when people say, oh, Gen Z is so conservative, Gen Z can't read, Gen Z needs AI to do everything, da 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 da. I need you guys to preface that with young Gen Z. Young Gen Z has no social skills. Young Gen Z needs AI for everything. Young Gen Z can't read. Young Gen
Oh,
Z.
she feeling this one.
Because I am 27 years old. 27, I went through my whole education from kindergarten
Facts.
to my college degree without AI. I didn't need it.
So I'm gonna have to agree with Alexandria here because when I first got to my job as a college counselor, the first generation of students I was working with were young Gen Z. And actually, now that I'm an unk and I've been in the game for a while, a lot of the students that I'm close with that were my students, like a while back, they're about 27, 28 as well. So that means that they're about the same exact age as Alexandria, and I would have to co-sign with her. I'm making these videos about educating you all about Gen Z as a college counselor. I am talking about young Gen Z. I am not talking about older Gen Z. Older Gen Z, as she was saying, grew up with the social skills. They grew up in the same kind of time period that I was in. And a lot of them, we cool. We cool. And they would agree. But I would say that there is a huge distinction between both generations of Gen Z. For sure. For sure.
But I know how to socialize because my childhood, my development years were not spent in a pandemic. They weren't. Like, I just, whenever, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure all generations get grouped up like that. But I feel like there is such a stark difference between older Gen Z and younger Gen Z. And I don't know when the cutoff is, but definitely for the Gen Z babies who were born before 9/11, we are a different breed. We are not like the young Gen Z. We have some similarities with them, don't
That's a
get me
fact.
wrong, but a lot of the negative things people have to say about Gen Z do not apply to us. And I do think
The question here is, what is the difference between the older Gen Z and the younger Gen Z? And through my 10 years of experience working with this group of students, I guess that I would say that the largest difference has to deal with, of course, as she said, the socialization. The older Gen Zs, those who are about 24 up, the ones that had either graduated from college right at the pandemic or during the pandemic, they grew up in a time period where they were seeing the change in technology, they were seeing the growth, but they still were grounded by the foundation that is laid by millennials, by Gen X, by boomers. That was the way that they grew up, as she said, pre 9/11, which is a large population of people. But where I saw the biggest difference in the change of generations were the Gen Z that were in high school during the pandemic. If you were a sophomore in high school, right? You're in 10th grade, sophomore, and then the pandemic hit. Those 2 years that everything was shut down also stunted your entire growth. And so those students, when they came into college and the pandemic was like lifted, they were essentially still high school sophomores. That's the way that I like to categorize it, is that the pandemic took about 2 years from everybody. So everybody got stuck at the age that they were at, and then they had to catch up. The issue with the younger Gen Z is, think about the 2 years that they lost. It was astronomical. Astronomical. And then even when you think about the younger ones, everything that they lost, fine. But the problem was what was gained, which was, oh, I don't got my phone. The phones. You thinking about the phones, you thinking about the TV, you thinking about Zoom, you thinking about virtual learning. That stuff was just thrown at you. And it has been irreversible. Students are not gonna they need virtual classes on their schedule because they just are not going to go. They get overstimulated. There's too much social interaction and they're used to being by themselves. Old Gen Z and young Gen Z are extremely different. But where they do have similarities is their ability to navigate social media, to navigate technology. Honestly, I think old Gen Z really, really have an advantage in our society today, for sure. guaranteed. Alexandria, thank you so much for this video. Yeah, let me know in the comments, man. What do y'all think? You know, or if you're an educator, did you run into these different generations of Gen Z? What do you think about the 2-year time lapse difference? I'm very interested to hear what y'all got to say, especially if you're a parent. I want to know what you got to say. So I'll holla at y'all. Thank you so much. Peace.